I'm joined now by Michelle Goldberg, opinion columnist for the New York Times, and Florida Democratic State Representative Anna Eskamani, who previously served as a senior director for Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida. And Representative, let me start with you because you're in Florida. Just this really is sort of the biggest change in the landscape I think we've had so far because of how large Florida is and how restrictive this bill is. What does it mean for the folks in your state?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Chris. It is absolutely devastating, and not just for Floridians, but for all the women in our surrounding southern states who come to us for care. In fact, I was at one of my local Planned Parenthood health centers yesterday, and we were rushing to see as many patients as possible, knowing that today there would be rejections, that patients would have to travel as far as North Carolina and Virginia to access abortion care.
Michelle, you were just in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. Today, they did overturn that ban, although clearly Republican leadership gave the green light to do it, but they only got, the smallest amount of votes necessary. What did you hear in Arizona about the politics of this issue in that state?
Well, obviously, it's incredibly unpopular. I mean, you're right that it's only a couple of Republicans who peeled away. It's still remarkable. Arizona is the first state with a Republican-controlled legislature that has backed off these draconian abortion bans, and it's obvious why they did it. It's a swing state. It has, both kind of a crucial role to play in the presidential election, has a very tight Senate election, and you've seen the Senate candidate, the Republican Senate candidate, Carrie Lake, who in the past had lauded this 1864 abortion ban.
Literally this bill, this law.
By name.
Yeah.
Right. Then kind of turned on a dime and said that she was no longer in favor of it. She was lobbying Republicans to repeal it. I went to a Carrie Lake event and I was speaking to somebody from Students for Life. The event was at Arizona State University. And she was kind of aghast that the Republican who led the push to repeal this in the House had recently spoken to her group, know. But I think that they know where Carrie Lake said at one point, if we don't repeal this, there's people who consider themselves pro-life who are going to vote for this abortion referendum. There's an abortion rights referendum on the Arizona ballot, as I believe that there's going to be in Florida. And so she hasn't kind of figured out her language. She's taken a number of different positions. She's kind of all over the place because this is so unpopular. And yet you have so many of the Republicans who are still so committed to this long-term project of abortion bans.
You also, Representative, will have a ballot initiative in your state. If I'm not mistaken, the threshold will be 60%. Is that right, statewide ballot initiatives in Florida?
Correct. Yeah, the Florida Republican legislature has continuously made it more difficult to pass ballot initiatives, but we were successful in less than 6 months in collecting more than 1 million verified signatures for this initiative, with 30% being signed by Florida Republicans. So we're very hopeful to hit that 60% threshold, but it will definitely be an intense campaign ahead of us.
So let me ask you, this is a hard question to answer, but I'll ask it. Who do people think are responsible? Ron DeSantis signed the legislation. The Republican-led legislatures in both houses are the ones that passed it. Donald Trump appointed the 3 justices on the Supreme Court that gave the majority to overturn Roe. 6 justices signed on, 5, fully to overturning Roe. Who are people directing their anger at?
Well, it's definitely going to be former President Trump, and I want to keep him former, but also his mini-me, Ron DeSantis, without a doubt. Governor Ron DeSantis signed this ban into law 11 o'clock at night in a private convening. It is not a popular piece of legislation, and in fact, more and more just everyday people who typically are not engaged in politics are coming out to say they're going to vote this November because abortion is on the ballot. Now, I think what's important is for folks to understand how high the stakes are. Most people, from my experience working at Planned Parenthood, they don't know the state of abortion until they need one.
Right.
So there is going to be a very intentional education campaign just so folks realize that we do have a 6-week ban. And as more of these horror stories get shared, I think that will also elevate the consciousness for more people to be ready to vote come November.
Quickly, in Arizona, where did you see people directing that anger?
Well, I think on both sides, they understand that Trump is responsible for this.
That's interesting.
The Republicans, it's interesting that Republicans, sometimes they don't believe that he's actually against the 1864 law, right? They will say again and again, no, he's the most pro-life president we've ever had.
Oh, that's interesting. So, like, you're violating, like, secret Trump canon if you're trying to repeal the 1864 law. That's fascinating. Michelle Goldberg, Florida State Representative Anna Eskamani, thank you both. Appreciate it.